Hello, I'm Luca Coasters, and in this video I'll be continuing the series in which I'll review my top 20 coasters, and today I'll be reviewing my 14th favourite coaster, Wildfire at Kolmarden. So Wildfire is an RMC top track coaster in Kolmarden, a huge zoo located in southeastern Sweden. The ride is one of the most beautiful RMCs. The lift hill structure looks magnificent as it stands so tall, and the second half looks impressive as it hugs the rock face that the coaster stands on. I also love how the first few elements of this coaster are tucked away in the trees, with some of the elements being completely hidden from the paths. The scale of this coaster is also impressive, especially for a wooden coaster. It's one of the tallest wooden coasters, reaching a height of 180 foot, and it's also one of the fastest as the speed tops out at around 71.5 miles per hour. The length of this coaster is also great compared to the other RMC wooden coasters, with a layout spanning over 4,150 feet. So in March 2014, Kolmarden began a teaser campaign in which the name Wildfire was announced and a cryptic video was released saying that the view of the park would be changed forever. However, seeing as the park seemed to be focusing on family editions, with their family area being the focus of their expansion in 2015, people paid little attention to it. Over the coming months, more bits of information were released, and speculation started that they could be getting an RMC top track coaster, as Vekoma had recently announced that they were representing RMC in Europe and that their first joint project would open in 2016. And then on April 8, 2014, the coaster was officially announced and the hype increased massively. An animation was released and the community loved the look of this bigger, better version of Outlaw Run, and the layout was unanimously praised by everyone. However, in 2015, when the coaster was well into the construction phase, the license to construct Wildfire was revoked because the county government had appealed against it because of the backlash from locals and its close proximity to animal enclosures. Later that year in June, after the park appealed against this, permission was yet again granted to build the coaster. However, the problems with the permits is one that unfortunately continued into the future. During the rest of the construction from September 2015, Kolmarden started their Building Wildfire series, in which they shared regular updates of construction throughout the off-season and beginning of the 2016 season. This also included a POV from one of the first test runs in June 2016 and a very interesting review from Rob Alvey.
It is almost impossible to describe just the complete batshit crazy fucking mental fucking crap coaster because it kicks ass.
Yeah, calm down there, mate. By the time the ride opened, every enthusiast was excited to find out if it lived up to the hype. And for most people, it did, with many calling it a perfect coaster and a masterpiece. It just sucks that in October, the permits to open Wildfire were revoked, leaving the ride indefinitely SPNO. Thankfully, in 2017, the ride was able to reopen, and it shot straight to the top of my priority list in Europe. I got round to visiting Kolmarden on a very quiet day in the beginning of June 2018. Wildfire itself is located in the very back of the park, so you have to walk around 20 minutes to actually get to it. But this leads to a great reveal when approaching the ride. Initially it looks really small as it's tucked away behind some trees, but when I reached the plaza I was impressed by the immensity of the coaster. When you reach Wildfire's plaza, you can see the iconic spinning saw entrance sign, which looks amazing, and behind that is the impressive lift structure. The theming mostly revolves around a sawmill theme and is subtle, only really being found in the station. Nonetheless, it looks amazing. The theming is made by the Dutch company Eurovision, and the theming that is there is really well finished and looks really nice. The station is filled with saws, but my favourite theming element in the station is definitely the glass cabinet filled with smashed phones. The overall look of the train is also great. From afar, the design might not seem too impressive, but it's well detailed and has a really nice rustic aesthetic, which really fits the theme of the coaster well. The trains used are the first gen RMC trains, which first appeared on Outlaw Run at Silver Dollar City, and have since been used on 11 of RMC's coasters. I personally actually really like these trains. They're pretty roomy, and in my opinion the restraints are great. While they do have shin guards, which many people don't like, I on the other hand like them as they help not to get stapled. The restraints are also really well shaped so that they cause little discomfort when stapled, except for on extreme airtime moments, but nonetheless they're still great. One annoying thing about the trains is the fact that they have a seatbelt, which really slows down operations, as the ride-up must check the seatbelt before you can pull down your lap bars. But the best thing about the ride-ups here is that they don't staple, so you can really enjoy the airtime that this coaster has to offer. Fortunately, despite the slow operations, when I visited, Wildfire was almost walk-on as the park was not crowded, allowing me to get a total of 26 rides on it. So after being dispatched, the coaster takes a 90-degree right-hand turn which goes under one of the final turns of the coaster before attaching to the lift hill. While ascending, you get time to appreciate the amazing view of the surrounding Swedish forest. Behind you, you can also see Braviken, a bay of the Baltic Sea, which is perhaps the most impressive part of the surroundings. After cresting the lift hill, the train dips down slightly before entering a 270-degree right-hand turn nicknamed the Crow's Nest. This allows you to get a better view of the surrounding Kolmarden forest before rising into a small bump which leads into the 161-foot, 83-degree first drop. In the front row, this drop is far from impressive. You just hang over the edge at the top before receiving a weak dose of floater air. But the back row is a completely different story. Because there is a small bump, the airtime in the back is insane. In the back row, you're dragged over the bump, creating a strong and sustained moment of ejector airtime. This coaster goes from being a really weak drop in the front to it being one of my favourite drops ever in the back. You're just falling for so long while being ejected out of your seat in one of the strongest moments of airtime I've ever experienced. At the bottom of this drop, you are slammed back into your seat in what is a fairly strong moment of positives, which caps off at around 4 Gs, which is really impressive for an RMC, let alone a wooden coaster. In the first valley, the ride also dives under the track of some elements later in the layout while turning to the right, making for an amazing head chopper which felt way too close for comfort. This is also where the coaster hits its maximum speed of 71.5 miles per hour, and trust me, you can really feel the speed in this section. After this brief right hand turn, the train rises up into the first inversion, a huge 0G stall. The train rises high above the tree line whilst maintaining its speed, and the sensation of speed is really heightened as you're flying through the dense wooden structure all while inverted. At the start of the element, you feel perfect 0Gs while inverted, which is a really unique sensation, but towards the end you fall back into the restraints in a decent moment of hang time. I'd actually say my favourite aspect of the inversion is the transition into and out of it. The transition into it is so whippy, especially when you're sitting on the left side of the train. Whilst rotating 180 degrees, you are slammed to the left in a strong moment of laterals which really throws you around. On some of my rides, I almost hit my friend sitting in the seat next to me as the ride threw me around so much. The exit to this element is also whippy, but it doesn't quite reach the heights of the transition into it. You'll nudge to the right as the train swiftly banks, but it's nothing too insane. The train then banks even further to the left, going into an uphill left-hand turn. Just as the train reaches the top of the turn, it suddenly banks to the right so that you are now perpendicular to the ground. Whilst you're banked outwards, the train turns slightly, giving a fairly strong moment of ejector, similar to that of a wave turn. The train hauls through this outward bank wave turn, and the sudden changes in direction lead to some really extreme forces. And even similar manoeuvres on this, such as the one on Lightning Rod, didn't even come close to this particular element. The first 3 elements on this coaster have to be some of the best ever created by RMC, but unfortunately after this the quality goes downhill. Upon exiting the crazy 90-degree outward bank turn, the train navigates a low to the ground left hand turn which has a good sensation of speed, and it also flies through the best theming element during the ride, a shed filled with smoke, which makes the ride feel even faster than it already is. The train then rises up the natural terrain and suddenly banks to the right on a twisted airtime hill. This moment has decent ejector, but it doesn't quite stack up to the previous element or even most airtime hills on other RMCs, but it is still a fun element. There is also some laterals on this element as the train whips from right to left so suddenly, but it isn't too violent. In the second half of this element, the train races through the wooden structure under the 0G stall, which can make for a good head chopper, which is improved by the fact that you're already being flung out of your seat because of the ejector on the twisted hill. The train then continues climbing up the hill and enters a regular old airtime hill, which is definitely nothing outstanding. The airtime is fairly sustained, but lacking in strength. It's definitely ejector, but weak ejector. You're pushed out of your seat, but it lacks the insane feel like you're gonna die aspect that many other RMCs have on their airtime hills. At the bottom of this hill, the train banks to the right and ascends into this wave turn-like element. The train banks highly and there's a small bump which gives a brief and weak moment of airtime, but it's hardly noticeable. The train then navigates a 180-degree turn before rising up into the second inversion, a 0G roll. At this point you're on the top of a rock face where the train is at its highest elevation under the coaster, so the coaster doesn't have too much speed, but it still keeps a nice pace. The inversion itself is pretty good. It isn't too aggressive, but it's floaty and the sensation of weightlessness during this element lasts for a while as the roll is so drawn out. One particular thing that is great about the second half of this inversion and the subsequent turn is that the train is right up against the rocks, flying through the wooden structure of the inversion and also a turn later in the ride, really adding to the sensation of speed. The train then navigates a left-hand turn and rises up while suddenly banking to the right while dipping down a small drop. This element is so aggressive and you're suddenly and violently thrown to the left while experiencing a powerful moment of ejector. This is probably the strongest moment of airtime on the coaster, and actually feels very similar to the first till on the trick track double up on Storm Chaser, except on Wildfire the element is less powerful, but it lasts for longer. This element really ramps up the intensity for one final moment, giving a great pop of ejector which actually has strength which compares to that of the best RMCs. The train then whips to the left, giving a jolt of laterals which push you to the side, and then you navigate a low to the ground left hand turn which is nothing special. The coaster then rises up and at the top of the element the train banks to the right. The element has subtle laterals and airtime while cresting the top, but it's nothing amazing, and it's definitely not aggressive. The turning descent after has good positives, which are surprisingly sustained, which is a nice change for an RMC, but honestly, at this moment in the coaster, positives don't fit and really felt out of place, and they ended up not actually adding to the experience. At the end of this descending turn, the train passes under the lift hill, and then it enters the third and final inversion of the coaster, another 0G roll. This one is very different from the first. The The train goes through it with more speed and it's less drawn out, making it more whippy. Many people love this element, but I wasn't blown away. It has subtle laterals, but it didn't really throw me around that much, and I just felt like it was an average inversion. Following this lackluster element, the train rises up while banking to the right, giving a nice moment of laterals, added to by some decent floater, but this element still lacks the aggression that most RMCs have. This element is followed by an uphill turn which lacks any strong forces before flattening out at the top and beginning a drawn out descent which only has floater. The train then reverses some back-to-back S-turns, which are fun but they don't have much force, meaning that they're not too exciting. The train then enters one last ascending turn before entering the brakes with a fair amount of speed. I came off this coaster with mixed thoughts, and honestly, it didn't really feel like any other RMC, and this actually hurt the ride for me. After the first three elements, it didn't feel nearly as relentless or aggressive as any other RMC I've ridden, which is disappointing. Even after warming up, it felt like it under-delivered. Why I believe so many people praise this ride is because of the variety, as it focuses on a bit of everything, and hence it has less focus on airtime. But the thing is, RMC shines when it comes to airtime, and it really is their strong suit, so when you make a less airtime focused ride, it just isn't as good, and dare I say it's even slightly boring. I also found the pacing on this coaster to be weak. There are a couple moments on this coaster where it really lets up, most significantly the sequence of the wave turn in the second inversion, and also the sequence of the turnaround and the drop below the lift hill just before the final turns. By the end of this coaster, even though it had good speed, the elements just didn't quite deliver the extreme forces which I've come to expect from an RMC. Despite this, the first half is amazing and some of RMC's best work. I feel like the combination of the lack of room RMC had to work with, and the difficult terrain made an airtime focused ride much harder for RMC to achieve. So, like many coasters around this area in my rankings, Wildfire's best moments are some of the best out there, but the weakest moments are also pretty bad. But on Wildfire, the best parts are particularly good, so I'd have to give it a high score of 94 out of 100. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Wildfire at Kolmarden in the comment section below, and a like and subscribe would be much appreciated.